Welcome to the Leadership Spark podcast, where we equip you to be the great leader your people deserve. This is Corey, and today I want to talk about a skill as a leader that you need to be elite at. If there are skills that we need to narrow down, that as a leader you need to be at an elite level, this is one of those. And there's only a handful of those that become the must-haves that as a leader, regardless of who you're leading and how big your team is or the responsibility that you have as a leader, you absolutely have to become elite at this skill. And the skill that we're talking about for the next 2 or 3 days is the skill of feedback. Now, when you hear feedback, you probably feel an emotion. When you hear feedback, you probably maybe think about an experience that you've had being on either the giver or receiver side of feedback. Maybe it went well, maybe it didn't go well. Maybe you're not really skilled at feedback. You haven't done it a lot. Maybe you're new being a leader and you know there's this weight or this responsibility for you to give feedback to people on your team, but you just don't know how to do it. Regardless of where you are as a leader when it comes to feedback, it's a skill that you need to commit to develop. And it's a skill that will allow you to be successful if you learn to be elite at giving feedback. And so over the next 3 days, I want to talk about feedback and just some thoughts about feedback and how you develop it, how you can make it pragmatic when it comes to how you think about feedback, or some of the key structures or frameworks or elements that you can think about when giving feedback. But before I dive into that, and today I just want to share just a few thoughts about feedback in general. But I just want to say this. A lot of times whenever we think about feedback, we think about the hard conversations or the corrective or constructive conversations that we have that are feedback. And that is part of leading, is that we have an expectation, people don't meet the expectation, and we have to correct people whenever we see it. But I want to say this, much more important than that, from a ratio perspective, is the positive side of feedback. It's accentuating the positive. A lot of times we get good at giving corrective feedback, but we don't develop the skill of accentuating the positive. We don't learn how to give positive feedback. We don't learn how to see when people do what we ask them to do or meet an expectation. And we miss the opportunity to give them feedback in a positive way. And I am so guilty of both of those. And so I need to develop my skills as a leader as well, because I don't see it all the time. I'm not paying attention at the level I need to where I can catch people doing the right thing so I can give them positive affirmation and feedback. And also I'm close enough to where I can see them doing things that may need to be corrective through constructive feedback. And so here's some general thoughts today just around feedback and what feedback needs to look like. And then tomorrow you can come back. I'm going to talk about the absolutely worst way to give feedback, so you don't want to miss that. And then day 3, I'm going to talk about a model that will allow you to be fast at giving feedback. And just some thoughts real quick before we wrap up today's episode is that when you're giving feedback, you want to be authentic when you're giving it. You want to not be inauthentic. You want to remember and recognize that it is another person that's sitting across the table from you, or that's on the other side of a video call from you. And you want to be authentic in how you approach giving leadership. You want it to come from the right place. You want your heart to be in the right place. And that means that if you are emotionally charged, you may want to take a step back before you give feedback, or you may not want to give feedback in the moment. You may want to circle back and give feedback after you've had a time to regulate yourself a little bit, so you don't say something that you can't take back whenever you're giving the feedback. So you want it to come from the right place. You don't want feedback to be personal. Feedback should be targeted at a behavior that you want corrected, or an outcome that you want corrected, or a skill that you want developed. It's not personal. Feedback shouldn't be personal at work. And so you don't want to attack the person whenever you're giving feedback, or you want to think about not embarrassing people in front of their peers. The environment in which you give feedback is very important. And so you have to think about, is this the right place for me to do it? Because maybe this is better if I do it one-on-one versus saying what I'm about to say in the group of people, to where it wouldn't add value for them to hear it, and then it would really hurt the person and embarrass them. And so you don't want to clown people in front of their team and in front of their peers. You want to most likely give feedback, if it's constructive, in a one-on-one environment. Even if it's affirmation, a lot of people like that individual or personal or one-on-one versus in a group. You have to ask the question to figure that out. You have to remember that feedback is not one size fits all. The way that you engage one person to give them feedback is not the same way the other person wants to receive feedback. So you have to understand the individual ways people on your team want to receive feedback, and then adapt your leadership to each person individually whenever you have to give them feedback, whether it's positive or corrective feedback. And the last thing I'll say today is that you want to be direct, but not mean. I think it's important when you're given specifically corrective feedback or constructive feedback is that you get to the point, and you're direct, but you can do that in a way that has empathy, in a way that is not mean when you're giving feedback. Because at the end of the day, your heart and my heart when I give feedback should be to help the person get better. If it's corrective, if it's positive feedback that I'm giving, it should be to reward them and affirm them for things that I want them to do more of. And so there's a change that we want to get in giving feedback. It's either get more of something or it's to change something that someone may be doing. And if we're mean, if we're personal, if we're inauthentic, if we do it in front of peers, getting that outcome will be very difficult. And so those are some ideas around feedback, general thoughts on feedback. Come back tomorrow and I'm going to share with you the worst way to give feedback. And please, you don't want to miss this one because you don't want to give feedback this way.